Hey guys, welcome to Through the Bible Verse by Verse, a plain and simple study of the whole Bible, entire Bible, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse. Currently, we are in Leviticus chapter 16. Just a quick reminder, I've been gone away for a week, actually getting over COVID, but I just want to remind you that as we move through some of these Mosaic laws, especially Leviticus, because Leviticus is primarily and strictly the manual for the priest. It is the operating manual for the priest. And so because of that, some of the instructions, the chapters are meticulous and repetitive. So we do not need to go over them and read them over and over and over again. If you were called as a priest, you studied this meticulously, because to not follow these instructions could cost you your life, and we're going to see that in just a moment. So that's why in some of them I will skim through just to kind of keep our pace going. And then so with that, let's get to Leviticus chapter 16. It says, the Lord spoke to Moses after the death of two of Aaron's sons when they approached the presence of the Lord and died. Now we studied this, his two sons, and it later would come out that they might have been even drunk, and then they decided they were going to go in and make an offering to the Lord. Now this is after the instructions have been given to them, but yet they still approach. At that time, we read that the drunkenness probably was a part of that. This chapter is going to give even more clarification that you do not treat God just any way or common, and that's going to be kind of key. Verse 2, the Lord said to Moses, tell your brother Aaron that he may not come whenever he wants into the holy place behind the veil in front of the mercy seat on the ark, or else he will die, because I appear in the cloud above the mercy seat. That is key right there. You just can't come. They weren't to come any way they want. Notice he said, whatever they want. When God first appeared to Moses through the burning bush, and remember he told Moses, take off your sandals, for the ground that you stand on is holy. Now the ground was just that, ground. It was dirt before the Lord appeared. It was dirt after the Lord appeared. But while the Lord was there, it wasn't common. It was to be treated as holy or set apart for God's use. That's what the word holy and holiness means, to be set apart for God's use. And so God put Moses in the mindset, you are not to treat me as common. That goes for a common God, a common practice, common anything. That's why Aaron's sons died. Now later on we're going to see when David, in fact David will have actually a good heart or good motive. He decided he was going to bring the ark back to Israel, or he was going to move the ark, but he did it in an incorrect way. And the guy who was carrying the ark died as a result of that. Okay, so here is instructions, strict instructions. You cannot approach the way of God just any old way. Okay. Now, verse 3 says, Aaron is to enter. Now, let me say this too. Aaron is the high priest at this point. The tribe of Levi is set apart as a priestly tribe. In other words, during this time, if you were a Levite, by God's command, you were a priest. Not a doctor, not a lawyer. You were a priest. That was your primary function. They cared for the tabernacle, later the temple. It was Aaron's sons, Aaron and his sons or descendants, they were the high priests. Sometimes you'll see that if you're reading through the gospel, and like for example, the parable of the Good Samaritan, when it says there was a priest and Levite. Well, the priest probably was the direct descendant of Aaron, and the Levites, they were the descendants of the tribe of Levites, but they all cared for the temple, the tabernacle, the worship. Aaron himself was called by God as a high priest, and only Aaron could appear before God and make and offer these kinds of offerings. Where his sons messed up. One, they were drunk, and then they just thought they could come in any way, and they died. Okay. Aaron is to enter the most holy place in this way with a young bull for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering. He is to wear a holy linen tunic, and linen undergarments are to be on his body. Now remember, they were one of the instructions where they were to make these priestly garments. Okay, and only Aaron were to wear these priestly garments, and they were to wear them when they were making their offerings before the Lord. He said he must tie a linen sash around him and wrap his head with a linen turban. These are holy garments. He must bathe his body with water before he wears them. He is to take from the Israelite community 2 male goats for the sin offering and a ram for the burnt offering. Aaron will present the bull for his sin offering and make atonement for himself and his household. Next, he will take 2 goats and place them before the Lord at the entrance of the tent of the meeting. Aaron is to cast lots for the 2 goats. One lot for the Lord and the other one for Ahaziel. He is to present the goat chosen by lot for the Lord and sacrifice it as a sin offering. But the goat chosen by lot for Ahaziel is to be presented alive before the Lord excuse me, and make purifications with it by sending it into the wilderness for Ahaziel. Now, let me stop and say this here. With this particular word, Ahaziel, some of you may recognize this as the term of a name of a demon. Okay? The name of a demon. So this gave me great pause when I read this, because I'm like, oh, stop, what the heck? And especially this, you see the language here. If you're reading in a traditional King James and other translations, it reads scapegoat. So what is the difference? Is this a demon? No. The attachment to demon came later. The symbol of goat, and it was a pagan worship, demonic worship. But that's not the use of the word itself. The Hebrew word comes from goat or scapegoat. It's just the King James translation, the translators use scapegoat. The Home and Christian Standard use Ahaziel. Okay, Azael. Okay, but there's no contradiction here, and this is in no way then attributed to demon worship or anything like that. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that to be clear. Sometimes in translations, when you go back to how they choose to use certain words, and again, let me just do a little quick sidebar. The reason why I like the Home and Christian Standard translation, I find it to be a very accurate and modern translation. Not just like the other translations that seek to, when I say be modern, they seek to be cultural, and so I don't use those. But this is the translator said we wanted to make as accurate as a translation as we can. So when you come to these kinds of things right here, now, like I say, if you type the word Azazel, okay. The first thing that's going to come up is demon, the demon goats, demon worship. But understand the word itself especially when you go back in the beginning, wasn't used that way. So the best way to kind of understand this, is simply the scapegoat. The idea was the sins of the people. There were two things that happened with going on here. This is the Passover, once a year Passover offering, the atonement offering for the sins of the people once a year. It's going to clarify that later. One of the ways was two goats. One goat was the actual sin offering. Then the other one was the priest, as you're going to see, will lay their hands on this goat, which is called a scapegoat, or Azazel. Sorry about that. I did practice this too to pronounce it. But anyway, the idea, the picture for the people was that their sins were being laid on this goat. This was the actual goat, okay? That their sins were being laid on this goat, and then the goat was to be sent off into the wilderness, symbolizing that their sins were being taken away, driven away into the wilderness. Of course, also a sin symbol of the atonement, the eternal atonement given by Jesus Christ. So that's what's going on here with that. So verse 11 says, when Aaron presented the bull for his sin offering and makes atonement for himself and his household, he will slaughter the bull for his sin offering. He must take firebrand. Now I'm going to skip down from this, because this is very specific what they were to do in terms of the offering itself, as the high priest. Okay. Verse 15, when he slaughters the male goat for the people's sin offering and brings its blood inside the veil, he must do the same with the blood that he did with the bull offering. Again, just skipping down to some of this. Look at verse 17. He says, no one may be in the tent of meetings from the time he enters to make atonement in the most holy place until he leaves, after he has made atonement for himself, his household, and the whole assembly of Israel. So notice it was only Aaron, the high priest, was to be in the temple at the time, or the tent of meetings. Then he said he will go out into the altar that is before the Lord and make atonement for it. Alright, let me skip down. Verse 21. Look at verse 20. When he has finished purifying the most holy place, the tent of meeting, and the altar, he is to present the live male goat. Aaron will lay both his hands on the head of the live goat and confess over it all Israel's wrongdoings and rebellious acts, all their sins. He is to put them on the goat's head and send it away into the wilderness by the man appointed for the task. The goat will carry on it all their wrongdoings into the desolate land, and he will release it there. In other words, they were never to see the sins of this again. So this was, again, this meticulous process that Aaron did once a year. Okay, then there's further instructions about after that was done. Verse 23, Aaron is to enter into the tent of meeting, take off his linen garment he wore when he entered the most holy place, and leave them there. He will bathe his body with it in the holy place and put on his clothes. And then it kind of goes on again. Same thing. Verse 26, the man who released the gate for the Azazel is to wash his clothes and bathe his body with water after he may enter the camp. I guess keeps going on. Verse 29, this is to be a permanent statute for you. In the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, you ought to practice self-denial and do no work, both the native and the foreigner who resides among you. Atonement will be made for you on this day to cleanse you. and you will be cleansed from all of your sins before the Lord. Now, of course, this is once a year, right? Because man was a perpetual sinner. Verse 31, he said, it is a Sabbath of complete rest for you. You must practice self-denial. It is a permanent statute. The priest who is anointed and ordained will serve as high priest in the place of his father who make atonement. He will put on the linen garments and the holy garments and purify the most holy place. He will purify the tent of the meeting and of the altar, and will make atonement for the priest and all the people of the assembly. Verse 34, this is the permanent statute for you to make atonement for the Israelites once a year because of all of their sins. The writer of the Hebrews, it said all this was done as the Lord had commanded Moses. Now, the writer of the Hebrews makes mention of this. And so there's two things. One, you see this meticulous process they had to go through in order to atone for the people's sins, which they sin constantly. And then secondly, you see there was always this reminder that they were sinners. Why? That sin was always present with them. So while symbolic, it still was a reminder we are sinners. The writer of Hebrews tells us that Jesus entered once in the holy place. In fact, while I have some time, let me see if I can quickly go to this and sort of look this up here and show you. Let's see here. I gotta go through. If I can find this in chapter 10. Alright, let me see if I can find this, guys. Actually, chapter 9 really talks about that chapter we just read. But let me read here. Since the law has only a shadow of good things to come and not the actual form of these realities, it could never perfect the worshipers by the same sacrifices they continue to offer year after year. So we just kind of read that. Otherwise, wouldn't they have stopped being offered, since the worshiper, once purified, would no longer have a conscience for sin? But the sacrifices there is a reminder of sins every year. But it's impossible for bulls and goats to take away sins. So let me see, because I'm running out of time here. So look at verse 12. Now look at verse 11. Every priest stands day after day ministering, and we're studying this, of course, in our book. But he said every priest stands day after day ministering and offering the same sacrifice time after time, which can never take away sins, which is why I'm skimming through, like I told you. Well, notice this, the same sin, same meticulous way. But this man, referring to Jesus, after offering one sacrifice for sins forever, sat down at the right hand of God. He is now waiting to his enemies to be enemies are made footstool. I'm sorry, for verse 13 again. He is now waiting until his enemies are made his footstool. For by one offering, meaning Jesus, he has perfected forever those who are being sanctified. So that is the difference. So as we go through, we're seeing the meticulous way, right? Meticulous and repetitive offerings that the high priest had to make every year. Notice he said it never cleansed their sacrifice for sin. All right, chapter 17 in our next study. I will see you then.